You have the chance to become part of something much bigger than yourself.
What do you know about me?
Everything. A new species is being born. Help me guide it. Shape it. Lead it.
Time for the tour.
You have no idea what I'd give to feel
Normal.
All right, talking about them big old sweaty X-Mans.
What, like they used to be women and now?
How are you going to turn the X-Men into a underarm deodorant commercial?
Easy. When you got a mutant funk, you need a mutant deodorant to tackle that shit, man.
There you go.
Man, let me tell you something. Everybody want to know this story. Everybody who knows the X-Men, it's like they heard the stories, man. Professor X and Magneto, they used to be homeboys back in the day. They used to be, thick as thieves, man.
Who knew they were gingers?
They are all about the bromance.
They're all about the bromance. And what happened? What happened to break up the greatest mutant bromance ever known to man?
Well, it's the same thing as Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, right?
But they weren't friends before.
That's what they keep shoving down my throat.
Let's pretend they were, and they were white and had mutant powers, then this is exactly like what happened.
And they lived in a world where people thought superpowers were dangerous instead of going, wow, that's cool. How can I do that?
Right.
No, you know what? You joke around, but the X-Men series, even with the comic book series, this had a very special place with the fans, because this whole mutant thing has been allegory for real life social mutants such as like gays, blacks, and Jews. So maybe the awkward teenagers thrown in there somewhere, but everybody has been looking at this as either you're like maybe a small social outcast or a huge social outcast, but they've always been relatable, as in, I see myself in these mutants because they never fit in, and sometimes they just want to lash out.
We've only had three movies to really like drive that down our throats. So
well, 5 now, really.
Yeah,
and 4 cartoon shows. Jesus. Yeah. No, this is.
It's okay to be different, people.
This is one of the most popular comics things ever. I mean, and next to Spider-Man, and for the exact same reasons, because it focuses on the ostracized characters. These characters are like, I'm so different. I'm not like anybody else, and I'm just going to sulk.
And it's
but I'm
also
still going to do the right thing.
It's also like one of the few superhero comics that caters to women. A lot of women like it because they have a lot of strong female characters in it.
Yeah, who like to wear lingerie everywhere they go.
I was about to say, it caters to me anytime you want to just paint a chick blue and just keep her naked. I'm down with that.
We can make that happen.
We can?
I think
I should have put that in my contract. What was I thinking?
Nah, man, you know what? Somebody had the smarts to say, you know what? This X-Men shit y'all doing right now, it ain't working, okay? I mean, y'all fucked up on 2 movies. I tell you, just stand back. Let's stand back. Let's go back. Let's just start over. And maybe it's a reboot. Maybe it's a prequel. I don't know, but we got to do something different here. And that's what they have done with this series. First, they brought in a director that's new to this series, Matthew Vaughn. Now, Matthew Vaughn is cool for this series for 2 reasons. Because, one, everybody knows him for the movie Kick-Ass that came out, I don't know if it was last year, a couple of years ago, but anyway, he did a superhero movie. But he also did a very, very stylish film called Layer Cake. The reason why that should be mentioned, and it's important here, is because Layer Cake is a very stylish film. And while it's a contemporary film, the style that he brought to that movie plays very well in this film, X-Men First Class, because X-Men First Class is not the kind of X-Men movie that we've been used to. It takes place in a completely different time period. It takes place during the 60s, during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And this plays out more like those cool, stylish James Bond movies that had a certain kitsch and sci-fi, but they were still very sexy.
Well, that was what they were openly going for. Matthew Vaughn even said that was the look he was like going and watching the old Sean Connery James Bonds, going, "This is what I want this world to look like." And sure enough, I mean, even like some of the characters who look pretty different in the comic books are changed just enough to feel more like they're maybe like from something like that movie. Like I thought January Jones as Emma Frost, the way they have her dressed up, she totally looks like a Bond girl from those days.
No, this whole movie, the whole opening up of this movie, it feels exactly like a James Bond film because it was wearing it on its sleeve. I mean, we see Magneto at the very beginning do his thing to where he's like running around hunting down people, but it feels like you're watching a James Bond film because, I mean, I was like, wow, how come this guy never came up for the James Bond role? Because I feel like right now I'm watching a James Bond film more than an X-Men film. But even saying that, I loved how they brought those two worlds together. I mean, it really made it for an even more realistic version of the X-Men than I thought the last three movies did, honestly.
Yeah, it's funny that it like wants to set up its own identity, and it does, but it also occasionally pointedly, I don't want to say how specifically, but reminds you that this is the same world as the previous X-Men films.
Which can kind of throw you in for a loop. Goddamn. I mean, that X-Men 3 movie, it really fucked things up. I mean, it really did. Because, I mean,
maybe
watching
that was
this,
just a dream.
You can't, well, that's the thing. Like, you can't help but see things in this new movie and then go back to the third one and go, if this series is connected, it still doesn't make any goddamn sense.
Well,
certain things don't.
Maybe they're counting on most people never going back to the.
Yeah, that's the
thing.
thing. I barely even think about the third movie anymore.
Yeah.
I can just remember some of the action sequences that I like, but the rest of it, I'm kind of like,
Plus,
I don't know.
audiences are willing generally to remember the stuff they like and not remember the stuff they don't.
Yeah,
if there's
why
enough
do you
of
want
the
to sit around
stuff they like.
remembering the shit?
Because it was bad shit. You tend to remember a really bad shit.
Yeah, you know, it's weird because people, if you haven't reading about this, I don't know where you've been if you're in the movies. I mean, this is one of the big tentpole movies of the summer, but you listen to this and you're saying, wait a minute, James Bond? You're talking about the 60s? Nah, you're talking about the X-Men mixed in with that? How does that all make sense? I don't get it. This is a mutant plot right here. Well,
wow, you're the voice of the people.
I speak for the people, man. I know what they're saying.
Well,
I know
who are
what
these people you speak for because they are dumb.
Well,
Get rid of them.
If that's the case, then let me break it down for these folks out there because they are out there. Now,
Take it, Professor K.
Yes, sir, I will. My mutant plot explaining powers will break it down for you right now. Now, to let you know, see, the reason why they're taking this back, they are trying to either do a reboot or just make a prequel to where they can just forget about the movies that they don't like. Namely here, X-Men 3 and the offshoot they had of that X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Well, y'all keep saying that, but those movies, they still play into this whole storyline. And nothing in this movie erases anything that happened in those.
They do, Leon, but that's the beauty of this film is that you can look at this and disregard those last two films that we have seen.
Yeah, you can disregard any of the other films if you want.
That's true.
Because this is the beginning.
They could relaunch this whole series if they so wished. And with the Hulk, we see they ain't shy about doing that. But with this one, we have a very young Charles Xavier, played by James McAvoy. And we also start out with a very young Eric Lenscher, played by Michael Fassbender. Now, everybody knows Eric is Magneto. And it starts out very similar to the first X-Men movie that we've seen. Starts out with a Jewish concentration camp where young Eric realizes that when he's put under a lot of stress, he has the power to bend metal. He's taken in, almost adopted by a really creepy Nazi guy played by Kevin Bacon called Sebastian Shaw. Now, Sebastian knows what he can do. Sebastian realizes, well, shit, you know, I can kind of farm this guy's powers for my own benefit. And sure enough, years later, we see Sebastian come in as a like swaggering younger version of himself. And he's on the verge of starting the World War III by placing nuclear missiles into Turkey. Now, Charles Xavier, whoever knew that Charles Xavier was such a player back in the day? Charles Xavier is minding his own business. He's about to be a professor. He's out there picking up chicks, letting them know that he's smart, using his mutant powers to pretty much get ass.
You can do a lot when you can read minds and you got legs.
It's as easy as this. If you can go to a bar and predict what a girl wants to drink, she will fuck you.
Well, not to mention to know the perfect thing to say every single time.
But yeah, he's got some Jedi mind powers. Even back then, at a young age, he realizes that he is gifted and talented. Throughout certain circumstances, and you guys can elaborate on this, he starts to realize that there are other people out there with extraordinary powers and gifts, a lot more different than what he has. I mean, you're talking about the ability to rearrange your DNA within minutes to make yourself completely something different. And when the government approaches him, especially a young agent played by Rose Byrne, who's in the comics known as Moira MacTaggart, she realizes that these mutants can probably help go against what Sebastian's about to do with their mutant powers and prevent the onslaught of World War III. She also kind of does a bad thing by bringing the awareness that mutants do exist to the government, which is the offset of this whole thing about the persecution of the mutants as we see in the later films.
Right, because this is like the key here, and what we're all waiting to see play out is that we know Eric / Magneto eventually turns to become leader of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, that he decides, you know what, humanity's not worthwhile to exist. We're the greater race. Whereas Professor X goes, no, we can exist together. It's just going to take some work. And really what this film, I mean, what you're waiting to see play out is these two, you know, their friendship splinter and become like these diametrically opposed polemics.
Yeah, I mean, it is an origin film which sets up all of the X-Men films, but I thought the heart of this is setting up the relationship between Charles Xavier and Eric Magneto.
Just call him Magneto.
And the thing is, whenever James McAvoy or Michael Fassbender are on screen as those characters, they own it. It's all about them,
totally.
Especially whether they're together or separate. I mean, those guys, it's all about them. And, you know, you got Kevin Bacon on there being as slimy as possible. It seems to be like the only roles he gets lately is being a slimy villain.
Well, he was so great in Super
I know.
that I was really looking forward to seeing him in this film. I was like, wow, I hope he's playing that villain again. But actually, I was slightly disappointed only because I thought they made him a little too smirky, a little too jokey almost, to where he didn't seem like he was that much of a real threat.
One of the problems I had with it is like when he comes on it first and he's a Nazi, he is really that evil and creepy, and he's got a flawless German accent.
Yeah.
It's so good. Then when he comes back later, no accent, no explanation about it. He's just Joe American who's...
Wow, you know what, Leon? I have to agree with you with that. Like Kevin Bacon, when he first came on, some people started to laugh, and I got mad because I was like, "No, wait, hey, now wait a minute. He's owning this shit right here." That German accent. Now I can't speak German, so I don't know, but I was like, that German accent works. They have him in makeup as an older person. I was even looking at that like, damn, Kevin Bacon got old. You know, that didn't even like makeup to me. But you know what? In this movie, when he's that old German, which is only for a scene, he is amazing. And then they do bring him back, and the biggest weakness of that character is Sebastian, in which they don't even explain. This character returns with a mutant power. Now we're supposed to assume that maybe he did some sort of evil Nazi experiments on young Eric.
They never said he didn't have a power before.
But it seemed like it's weird to not show it at all and then have it manifest later.
That's the thing.
I thought about that, but I thought, oh, well, really, considering how they use him in the early scenes, there was no reason for him to reveal what he could do at all. I mean, and afterwards, there's no reason to assume he didn't have a power.
But the thing is, it's completely glossed over.
Yeah,
the reason to show it is so that later it doesn't feel like it came out of the blue.
Well, there's no explanation for that character at all. Was he a mutant before?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
if you're a mutant, it means you were born with this.
Yeah,
with
no,
your
the
power.
technology to like make people become mutants artificially doesn't come till like much later.
It actually doesn't.
Well, see, for people who don't know that, like me, I'm like, you know, forget even the mutant power. It's like I just don't feel like I know this character. I feel like he's just a sneering, villainous, mustache twitching asshole who just came out of nowhere. And
that's the thing.
I liked him
As a Nazi scientist, I understood his motivation.
You're a Nazi scientist?
Shush. It took me a long time to get out of Argentina over here.
I was wondering what was up with that big swastika on your back.
No. When he was a Nazi scientist, I understood his motivation. But later, when he was Joe Average, just want to destroy the world, I just kept going like, I don't really get it. I mean, I understand Magneto. You want to get rid of humans so that mutants can take over. Mm-hmm. But he was talking about just destroying the entire planet with everybody. And I was like, I don't understand.
He's pretty much in the worst sense of the word, a cookie cutter villain.
Yeah.
But even though you can tell, like, you know, by the way he's going and hunting down, looking for mutants to join him in his cause, I mean, he is a precursor to what Magneto becomes.
Right. He's like
which makes him a little interesting.
He's an unhinged Magneto because his theory is that if you nuke everything, radioactivity is not going to do anything to mutants.
so the four of us that are left will just rule it all.
Yeah.
He was saying, oh, mutants will be fine. It's like, well, that doesn't really follow. I think someone in the script got confused about what mutation is in the concept of the X-Men.
Yeah.
But, you know, regardless, you're right. He is definitely. I mean, hell, he's missing his mutton chops for one thing, which
Yeah,
is
I know.
such a character-defining thing.
Exactly.
I was like, "Where's the mutton chops?" And Bacon does the best he can, but ultimately, the movie's not really about him. He's just there to give a motivation for the story to happen and to give us a chance to get to know all these characters. Some of which, at least, are really fascinating characters.
Despite what we think about Kevin Bacon's character or even his origin of who he is, you honestly don't care because you're more fascinated with the progression of how the X-Men become into being. And especially, like I said, the relationship with Magneto and Professor X. And the thing is that those guys, like when they are on the screen, they do chew up scenery. You can almost forget about Kevin Bacon and that whole plot altogether, only because they make the story of them going out searching for these other mutants to help them, like with this cause that they know something bad's about to happen and they need to build an army.
And
it's cool to see how all that plays out.
That sort of speaks to part of my problem why I didn't love this movie. Like I liked it, but I didn't love it because so often where it would get to those things, like those relationships that worked, that really worked. But then it had to spend some time with Kevin Bacon or the New Mutants they're pulling in. It just seems like it had so many things going that the stuff I thought really worked didn't get enough attention, and these other things dragged it down. To the point to where they recruit some of these kids, these New Mutants, Banshee and some of the others, and then they kind of just sit them in a break room for a while where they just play a little
They're
bit.
hanging out in the green room.
Yeah, they're hanging out in the green room. And so by the time like things are serious, y'all, we got to train. It's like, well, they got 5 days to do a montage of training.
It was a pretty cool montage, to be fair.
I didn't like the montage at all.
See, I thought that's like
great.
one of the better montages.
Yeah.
I thought it was a lot better than in the first X-Men, where you see like snippets of Xavier explaining how the school came about. Where I'm like, you know what? I want to see the kids. I actually want to see them train. It doesn't have to be for a whole hour, but the amount of time that they spent on it, I thought it was good enough, and I actually liked the way they executed the montage.
I agree with you, co-host. I mean, the cool thing about it is that they don't want to dwell on like new people too much. They want to dwell on some of the things that are going to actually lend itself to the legend of the X-Men that we know already. Like, for example, we have Jennifer Lawrence as a young Mystique. They explain a lot about her character, and it's pretty believable. I mean, this whole thing of you see both sides of the argument here. You see both sides of why Charles Xavier wants to like live in harmony with humans, and you see why Magneto's just pissed the fuck off and wants to get rid of humans.
Well,
and
it's funny, like she and Beast sort of serve as the audience avatars. You know, they're the ones who have to make that decision. Well, you know, they're both blue, but they're the ones who have to make the decisions of like which one is making the right decision. And anybody who's even mildly familiar with the X-Men or even the movies that came later, you already know what the answer is. But even more fascinatingly, the film really is kind of a love triangle because you're watching Mystique, who is one of equally as important a character as Magneto and Professor X, who's sort of equally drawn to both of their points of view in an almost romantic sort of way.
Sure.
Very literally in some senses. And I think Jennifer Lawrence does a fantastic job selling that. And I don't think this movie would have worked without her.
You're actually right about that.
It's very important.
Yeah, like she is caught between two ideologies right here. She's caught between, Magneto, who tells her like, look, shit, baby. He's working that shit too. He's just pimping. He's just like, hey, look, baby, I like you in your mutant form. You good with that. I don't know why you should be ashamed of that.
He's a Star Trek fan.
Oh,
so.
yeah.
Well, I figure that's part of his James Bond training.
Yeah.
You just learn how to seduce young women.
Yeah, he just knew how to seduce mutants, and he comes in and tells her like, you're cool with me.
If you're using half your concentration to look normal, then you're only half paying attention to whatever else you're doing. Just pointing out something that could save your life. You want society to accept you, but you can't even accept yourself.
A young Beast who's played very well and with very geek sensitivities by an actor named Nicholas Hoult.
He really sticks out in this movie to me.
Yeah, no, he plays a young Hank, Hank McCoy, who everybody knows as Beast, and his whole idea is like, man, my feet are fucked up. I gotta find somewhere. I can't go to Foot Locker and find some shoes or anything. I gotta get my feet fixed. I don't like looking like this. And so she's torn between, should I hide or should I actually be proud of who I am? Of course, being proud of being a mutant kind of leads you to believe like, well, I need to destroy all these human sons of bitches out here. It's a very cool storyline that's going on there. With the New Mutants that we have people read the comic books might know these characters. Like we have Caleb Landry Jones, who plays Banshee. We got Alex Gonzalez as Riptide, who can like control the elements.
Was he like, because Magneto's two henchmen were like two members of the Black Eyed Peas, I thought.
I think so. No, we have Lucas Till as Havoc, and then we got Eddie Gathegi as Darwin, who can like adapt to anything. I don't know.
Okay, here's the thing: if you're gonna join up with Xavier's X-Men, don't be black.
Yeah.
Because the black characters got the shaft in this movie.
Oh man,
No
they
pun
did.
intended.
I was like, wow, you got 2 or rather 1.5 since that is Zoe Kravitz, right?
That is Zoe Kravitz. By the
Yeah.
way, Lenny Kravitz is a mutant himself. He's black and Jewish. So,
But I was like, okay, you got 2 on the squad. Wow, that's what you decided to do with them.
yeah, I didn't like that either. I was just like, man, Kevin Bacon character is just racist. He going. I ain't gonna spoil anything for everybody, but let's just say he gives all the mutants a chance to like make up their minds about everything except this poor brother right here. He just said, I gotta get rid of you.
Come on now, his girlfriend's named the White Queen. What did he expect?
It is
And,
1962.
Yeah, that is true.
Let's not forget that he was actually a Nazi.
Yeah,
all right?
exactly. It's like
Sorry.
he's not subtle about
Yeah.
that.
You were right about that. You got me on that. And another thing about that brother, he had a power. His power is to like adapt to anything. Like if you put him in any kind of element, he can adapt. But that actor, I don't know what it is. That dude looked high all the time. His eyes were just red throughout the whole movie. I don't know if his mutant power is to just smoke mutant weed or be high all the time.
All I thought was like, did one of the crackheads from New Jack City kind of just stroll into this movie?
Taking in white skins, and you taking in the diamond skins, and you taking in the red skins. But what about the black skins? What are you doing for them?
And you right about that. That Nazi got rid of that brother quick. He didn't even get a chance to fight. He got rid of that. But you know what, man? I have to agree. One of the best things about this movie is James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender. I mean, you really do see like these guys being true friends. They're great actors to begin with anyway, and you see the conflict and the different ideologies between the two of them. And it is kind of heartbreaking to see them become like in the future arch enemies. But as much as I like most of this movie, I would even go say there's some things about this movie that I love. There are some things that did stand out to me that made this movie just not as good as I wanted it to be. And I still think it's a good film.
Would one of those things be the bad special effects?
I don't think
There-
special effects are bad.
I thought they were just. I didn't think they were like horrible, but I thought they were just so like, wow, that's a special effect.
You know,
Like-
they're
like-
way better than Wolverine.
Yeah, they were.
Oh, way
that's
better.
That's not a compliment.
Our,
Yeah, it is.
our
Yeah, it is.
animation looks
That's
more
like
real.
okay.
I know.
It's like you tell a girl like, hey, you're not as ugly as some chicks I've seen.
She's totally gonna back.
Yeah.
exactly.
I have to agree that some of the effects were not that great. Some of them were excellent. I mean, look, one of the best things about this movie are the effects that they do with a lot of the elements and a lot of the machinery. I mean, when you get Magneto like raising a submarine out of the water, or when he's destroying a ship with a chain, I mean, it's amazing. In fact, I would say the best effects that are in the movie are Magneto, who when he does his whole thing, when he's he's controlling like metal.
With the effects, at least, though, I guess maybe what worked for them is that just the way that they were shot and the way they were filmed. So, because even if something didn't look like, okay, that doesn't look quite real, just the way they shot it and the use of it pretty much like made me let go of any kind of real like nitpicking I had with the
I don't think
effects.
anything looked bad. There were things that went.
I never
okay,
thought,
yeah.
wow, that looks horrible.
There were things you
Never
go, well,
thought
it
that.
doesn't look totally real, but it doesn't look awful. It's obvious they still put a lot of work into it.
Mhm.
So-
I don't, it's weird for me because normally I don't care about special effects at all, and this was one where they were doing so many effects that were so germane to these characters. Where I was just like, that just doesn't look that good. It was just really standing out to me. Where normally I don't care.
But you know where I was really worried was a lot the flying sequences because I was
Yeah.
super worried about that. But I thought they pulled them off really well.
The you know what? Banshee flying, I thought was one of the best.
That was awesome.
I really dug that.
Yeah.
That was awesome. And everything with Magneto. Matter of fact, I'd say throughout this movie, everything with Magneto was a A+. I would love to see a whole movie that was nothing but Magneto as a 60s Nazi spy hunter with those magnetic powers.
Yeah, and the thing is, I know that they were pushing that before they were even pushing for a new X-Men movie.
Right.
And the thing is, like watching it though, I was like, you know what? I think I enjoy it more knowing that Magneto eventually has to interact with other mutants. Where
Sure.
just to see him in a standalone film, I'm like, that would still be cool too. Because believe me, the first part of this movie is pretty much a Magneto film. You see how he goes by, hunting these Nazis down.
Yeah.
But the thing is that I enjoyed it even more when he had to interact with Nazis, especially when they bring in Professor X, where they kind of like get into his whole psyche about why exactly he's doing it, and also letting him know, this really isn't going to solve your problems. I mean, just going crazy.
Well, you know what, co-host, you're right. You're right about that. I mean, the best parts of the movie is when Magneto is actually methodically hunting down these Nazis. And I mean, we don't see a whole lot of it, but when we see him go down to Argentina and he has a confrontation with these guys down there, it is a badass scene. Plus, I have to say, Magneto makes the turtleneck look badass, man.
He does.
Yeah, he does.
Not many people can anymore.
No, I know. Like, he made you want to run out to a thrift shop and see if you could find some of those 60s clothes.
God damn, that's what says the 60s. If y'all don't know what say the 60s style as well as anything else, it's a turtleneck. And if you can pull off a turtleneck, you're going to get as much ass as you want to back then.
Well, turtleneck with that badass leather jacket he was wearing,
Yeah,
which I thought I was like, wow, Shaft, you better fucking look out.
A larger point, though, is that one of the strongest things about this film, to me, was the way Matthew Vaughn really gave it such a sense of style, and both the way it's edited, just in the overall feeling of it, the way that, generally speaking, I felt he spent just enough time with the goddamn thousands of characters in this thing to give you enough of an overview of what's happening, where it's not confusing to either new guys or to people who are familiar with it. There's enough Easter eggs throughout. I mean, like every 10 minutes there's an Easter egg that you wouldn't know was important
honestly,
unless you knew.
I kind of got tired of those Easter eggs.
Oh, see, I enjoyed
Really, I
the
didn't.
I thought they
honestly
were
thought
all
it
the
was
great.
first half of them, I thought, hey, what a nod, and there's some cool cameos and all kinds of cool shit. But then later, I was just like, oh, we're not G-Men. No, you're X-Men. Wink. I was
Yeah,
like, all
that-
right,
that
that's
was-
not enough of that.
But that
was
wasn't really
terrible.
a Easter egg. That's them showing the origin of the
Yeah.
term.
Okay. I guess what I'm tired of. Okay, clearly this is a prequel that's not bad, but something. These prequels, like the one with Halloween, where it's like, okay, now we show you the origin of how this came about,
Right.
or now they joke about this thing. It's like, you don't have to give me every single thing.
I think it's more so what like Marvel's been doing with the Avengers franchise, where they throw tidbits at you, where they're really throwing it in your face. Like,
Yeah.
you know what's coming up now,
I know,
don't you?
That's some of the things that I don't like about this movie, and that's part of some of the bad dialogue that I think about it. One, it keeps unnecessarily reminding you about upcoming events with these comments. Like you mentioned one where they're talking about you're more like X-Men. That was unnecessary. That's just not funny. And then they have one where like in the same scene, Charles Xavier's like, I don't know, it's enough to make me want to go bald. I'm like, shut the fuck up. Like we know you're bald, all right?
I'll throw you that one. But the
because he
X-Men
made
one,
two
like I
references
said, is
like that.
not an Easter egg. It's here's how the term started. And I'm like, okay, I don't think y'all understand the difference.
I just say the difference. I'm lumping them all together.
Yeah, no, and I don't think that's
But-
fair to the movie.
But you know what I have to say though, even though what you're talking about right now, that really didn't like bother me as much as the continuing message of that we're different. You should accept who you are, because I'm like, okay, I've already had like 4 movies. I've had 4 movies like explain this to me, beat it down my goddamn head with a sledgehammer, and I'm just like, okay, you know what? You only have to say that once, and I get it.
Well,
Because
no,
you know what? I got really tired of hearing all the.
Well, it played a big.
You should embrace
Oh,
your.
well,
which
like-
I understand that's the whole point of the.
I
X-Men.
agree with you, but you can't have an X-Men movie without doing that.
Well, here's the deal, though. You can't have an origin story about the X-Men without them being told that they are different. That's the origin of it. I mean, it has that. If anywhere it has to happen, that happens here in this film.
But Carlos, it's right. It's a point where you expect to see a shooting star with a rainbow that says, "The more you know."
Exactly. I don't know, man. There's so many more things to complain about in this movie. Like I said, some of the dialogue is just terrible. I mean, there's a place to do an introduction, but not when you're fucking drowning in the water. It's like Magneto and Charles Xavier in the water. They're drowning. There's sharks around and everything. It's like, and Magneto's like, "Who are you?" And a simple thing like, "I'm your friend. Come with me." But Charles Xavier's in the water, putting out his hand, giving his business card. "I'm Professor Charles Xavier Esquire the Third." It's like, man, y'all are dying right now. Ain't that? You could just
You
say,
didn't like that?
You guys are nitpicking
I know,
to
yeah,
an
you're nitpicking
insane
a little
degree.
too much. Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
actually not holding that against the movie.
No, I actually
like.
I actually dug the hell out. I dug that scene.
Well, there's other parts where, like, and no spoiler here. We know, okay, if anybody says spoiler, if y'all know who Magneto is by fucking now, give me a break. But Magneto comes out, he's like, "You can call me Magneto," and I'm like, I'm sorry. I think there's a time and place. It's not so much I'm against the dialogue. I'm against the way they present it. And I mean, and I'm even against some things that they could have done better in the movie. I'm not going to spoil it, but they have a cameo in this film that I don't think it was necessary, but I was down with it. It's just the way they did it seemed like they just shot that in like 5 minutes. Like they ran out of film that day. Like, we don't do this right now, then we ain't gonna ever get it.
I thought that cameo was one of the best things. My only problem is that it drops a big F-bomb in it, and it's going to be people who take their kids, and it's right there in the middle, and just make you like wince. Like, they could have got out of this without doing that.
Well, Leon, let me ask you something. What did you think, out of all the stuff that I don't like about the movie, there was one thing that I thought was very cheesy in particular, and that was Kevin Bacon as the character, the Nazi Sebastian, where they did a montage of his plans to take over the world.
I love how you ask Leon before you ask.
I know, because I ain't got to ask y'all. Y'all don't know nothing. Y'all already know where y'all stand.
Let us know, sour grapes.
We were all in the theater together, but I sat way in front of everybody, so I couldn't see them. But I know when that scene came up, even I wasn't thinking about laughing. I heard people in the audience laughing because it was just so cheesy.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And Cyrus and Coast, maybe y'all were part of them.
No, I actually thought on some level they were doing intentionally sort of a James Bondian type thing there for playing it 4 laughs. I was like, that's what I got
Austin
from it.
Powers-y.
Yeah, I was like, okay, they're going for a classic type villain reveal, and I was like, all right, and that's what I think people were laughing at. I think they were laughing with the film, and I think that's exactly what the film was
Listen,
intended.
Cyrus, you were right about that. This movie slides by on a lot by being, it's the best of those James Bond goofy films, and it slides by on that a lot. I ultimately like this movie. I like it a lot. See, you guys think I'm nitpicking, but see, you're going to be surprised. See, don't judge me. Don't sit up here and sit back and punch your finger at me. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to give this a very low full price, because
we have very low full prices now.
Yes, we have.
Isn't that a matinee?
We got discount full prices going on right now.
Full price with a coupon from Arby's.
With a coupon from Arby's. Yeah.
Is that your mutant powers
to like
make shit like that up?
Price.
To like fuck up ratings? Yes, that's my new plan. No, because I really do think that this movie is enjoyable. I think they took it. I got admired for enough imagination and common sense to take this back to a point where they said, we messed up at 2 movies, we've done it, and to have the courage to actually make a film that's taking place in another period, because it works so much for this film. I love watching this film because of that. It's one of those things where a lot of people are not going to be able to buy this completely, because it's an absurd universe. You got to be able to believe that people can rearrange their DNA in a matter of minutes. But the good thing about that is that is what worked for the first film. And while this is going to a different period, it is going back also to that first movie, where they made me believe that all the absurdities that occur in these movies or in these stories or plots can be real within this universe. And so, yeah, I recommend this at a very low full price, but a full price nonetheless.
But isn't that the key, that it is like an absurd universe? I mean, it's like anything else. It's like Lord of the Rings or Star Wars. Yeah. It is ridiculous if you're looking at it versus our reality, but that's the key. You're not. You're looking at it versus their reality. You're analyzing the mythology they've created for themselves. And inside of that, I thought this movie really knocked it out of the park. It is not a flawless superhero movie. Neither is it, as some critics are actually calling it, the best superhero film, which I think is totally untrue. It might be, however, the best Marvel film. I think it actually is right up there with the best stuff that they've done. If there are flaws to be had with it, it's that I feel here and there's some weak performances. January Jones is not a great actress. She sure is nice to look at, but she doesn't have much going on other than that.
I mean, if there was ever a time for her to go ahead and take her top off, this would have been that time.
Yeah. Right. January Jones is known from Mad Men mostly right now.
And she's Emma Frost.
Sebastian Shaw, who's Kevin Bacon. The biggest problem Bacon had to contend with was Shaw's not even an interesting character in the comic books, much less in a movie. And sure enough, he's really at second-rate villain status here. But once again, this movie's not really about him. He serves his purpose well enough to move the plot along and to focus on the love triangle, so to speak, between the Professor X, Magneto, and Jennifer Lawrence, which fires on all cylinders. It works great, and it so defines the spirit of the whole X universe better than has been done yet in any other format, I think, except for the original comics, of course. I really loved this, even with caveats that it had problems, and I'm going to give it an enthusiastic full price.
Well, clearly, I'm not as in love with it as the rest of you guys.
So we've heard enough. Go on.
You know what? The movie to me is just very uneven. There's some places where, hey, it's awesome, especially, some of the actors as we've named, and then others who are either weak or just kind of placeholder, and they just kind of take time away from what could have been a tighter, more important story. It never had emotional impact on me. I never saw anything in it that made me go, wow, that's really cool. I never saw that before. But I did see plenty of things that I liked. It's just kind of mid-range. I'll watch it again, but it's not like how I felt when I came out of Thor, when I was so excited about going again. I got a big roller coaster charge out of that. And with this, there's some really cool things about it, but there's some other things that just kind of like make me go, meh. Enough so that the special effects were something I paid attention to, where normally I don't give it a second thought. So it comes down to being kind of like a high matinee for me.
Coming from my perspective, walking away from X-Men 3 and Wolverine, I completely wrote this series off. I'm like, you know what? Fuck that series. I don't even care to watch 1 and 2 again. That's like, those last 2 movies were like the prequels to where I'm like, I don't need to see this for another like good 10 years. But saying that, walking into this film, I was completely blown away by the first hour of this film, where I was like, wow, you know what? This film has managed to re-immerse me back into this world that I really dug watching X-Men 1 and 2. It's made me go, wow, Magneto is a badass motherfucker. And even like exploring the other characters made me more interested in those characters than some of the extra characters that you see sprinkled out throughout the entire X-Men series, to where I was like, man, I want to know more about this character, that fucking character. Where's my Wikipedia at? It really like threw me back in that world of a team movie. This is how a team movie is done right, honestly. Until somebody else surpasses that, until the Avengers surpass that, this is the movie as far as if anyone asks me what's a really great comic book film dealing with a team, X-Men First Class. It really is. And, and I was taken back by the incredible performances by the guys who played Magneto and Professor X. Those guys are phenomenal. I mean, they carried this whole movie on their backs, and I applaud them for that. They were great, and I'm gonna give it a full price, just because, wow, you made me give a shit about X-Men again. And I thank you for it.
What's the most exciting thing about this movie is that we finally have an answer when someone says, hey, what's a good prequel?
Oh, that's true.
There's a answer now.
That is true.
Right. You're absolutely right. Oh, but real quick, did you guys catch that? I don't know what you call it. You call it Easter egg or what? But when Magneto is like, we need to avenge. Or these guys, avenge, get it? Avenge.
Jeez, you just reaching for shit.
No. Ghost is right. The way he said it, like avenge, right? Avenge. I don't. Like, the rest of the it's like, yeah, we get it. Jesus.
With the amount of referencing that's already in the film, you really have to dig.
I was like, it's not even the same studio.
They still pimping that shit. Yeah.
You ready for this? Let's find out.
The cost of freedom is always high. No one can foresee precisely what course it will take. One path we shall never choose. That is the path of surrender.
Listen to me very carefully, my friend. Killing will not bring you peace.
Peace was never an option.